In the distant future, the galaxy is under the iron grip of the Draxian Collective, a coalition of several powerful alien species known for their advanced technology and ruthlessness. These beings, with their cold, calculating ways, have brought entire civilizations to their knees. They were feared throughout the universe, and their reputation was that of invincibility. The Draxians' most feared weapon? Fire. Not the fire of primitive civilizations, but a devastating engineered plasma that could burn through the very core of planets. They had mastered the art of fire in ways unimaginable to the lesser species, using it as a tool of war that left nothing but ashes in its wake. Entire worlds had fallen to the might of their firestorm armada. To them, fire was the ultimate symbol of power, and they wielded it without mercy or hesitation. Their invasion fleet, consisting of massive warships that looked like floating fortresses, descended on Earth. The planet, they believed, was nothing more than a resource-rich world populated by primitive humans who would be easily crushed beneath the weight of their superiority. The Draxians had faced countless species in the past, each one trembling in fear at the mere sight of their fiery weapons. So when they arrived at Earth, the leaders of the collective were confident too confident. They expected a brief skirmish followed by the complete submission of the humans. The Draxian Supreme Command had already made plans to strip Earth of its resources, burning its forests, cities, and oceans to ensure nothing was left for future generations. Their minds were set. Earth would be just another trophy in their long list of conquests. But as the Draxians began their assault, something strange started to happen. It began with small resistance groups scattered across the planet, using crude weapons they had fashioned from their technology. The Draxians laughed at first, dismissing these humans as nothing more than insects, trying to bite at the heels of giants. Their firestorms swept across the Earth, and the human cities, once filled with life, were reduced to ruins. The skies darkened with ash, and the oceans boiled with the heat. It seemed like victory was assured, and the Draxians celebrated their success. Yet, there was something in the air. The humans, these weak, frail beings, weren't giving up. They had begun to fight back in ways the Draxians had not anticipated. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a desperate struggle, a brief flare of defiance that would soon be extinguished. But as the days passed, the Draxians began to notice something odd. The humans weren't fleeing, nor were they cowering in fear. Instead, they were adapting, learning, and strangely thriving in the very flames that were meant to destroy them. It was the fire itself that made the difference. The Draxians had assumed that because they had mastered fire, they had cornered the market on it. But they had never truly understood it. Fire, for them, was simply a tool, a weapon to be controlled. But the humans, they had a different relationship with fire. They didn't just use it. They respected it, learned from it, and, most importantly, embraced it. A small group of human engineers, scientists, and soldiers had developed an unexpected weapon, a flamethrower. It wasn't anything impressive at first glance, just a crude tool that shot fire across short distances. But in the hands of a human, it became something more. The flamethrower wasn't just a weapon. It was an extension of their will. It was a symbol of their spirit. And in the face of the Draxian onslaught, the first time the Draxians encountered a human with a flamethrower, they were confused. They expected their firestorm to burn through everything in its path, to leave nothing standing. Instead, they saw humans hiding behind the charred remains of their cities, using their crude flamethrowers to push back the invaders. The Draxians fired their plasma weapons with brutal efficiency, but the humans, though injured, fought back, using their flamethrowers to create walls of fire, blocking the aliens' progress. The Draxians thought it was nothing more than a nuisance, a delay, but it was something much more. The resistance continued to grow. It wasn't just a few brave soldiers. Soon, the entire human race began to adapt, modifying and perfecting their flamethrowers. What was once a simple weapon became more advanced, more deadly, as humans learned how to harness fire to its fullest potential. They began using fire to outmaneuver their enemies, creating tactics that left the Draxians scrambling to adjust. It wasn't just about destruction anymore, it was about survival, and the humans had discovered a way to turn fire into their greatest ally. But the Draxians didn't take this lightly. They began to send more advanced units to Earth, better equipped to deal with the threat. They sent heavily armored troops, plasma artillery, and advanced mechs, each one more powerful than the last. But no matter how hard they tried, the humans' flamethrowers always found a way to strike back. They discovered ways to modify the flames, turning them into high-powered jets of plasma, capable of cutting through the Draxians' armor. The flames became a symbol of the resistance, and the Draxians couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. As the battle raged on, the Draxian leaders began to realize they had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity, and in doing so, they had awakened a force they could never control: human ingenuity. The fire that the Draxians had once used as their weapon of conquest was now being wielded against them in ways they never could have imagined. The humans, it turned out, weren't just survivors, they were innovators. They had found a way to use fire not just to destroy, but to create something entirely new. And as the flames of rebellion spread across Earth, the Draxians could only watch, stunned, as their empire teetered on the brink of collapse. The fire that had been their strength was now their downfall, and the humans, these creatures they had thought so weak, had turned the tables. The battle was far from over, but one thing was certain: the Draxians had underestimated humanity's true power. They had thought they had mastered fire, but they had no idea what they were up against. The Draxians launched their strike against Earth with terrifying precision. Their vast fleet, with its towering ships and plasma cannons, swept through the atmosphere like a storm of fire, turning Earth's major cities into charred ruins. From the moment they arrived, the skies above the planet were filled with the ominous glow of plasma bolts raining down, igniting skyscrapers and forests, leaving nothing but smoldering rubble in their wake. The Draxian invasion was swift and relentless, an unstoppable force designed to crush the planet's defenses before they had a chance to react. From orbit, the Draxians controlled the skies with terrifying efficiency, their weapons cutting through Earth's defenses as easily as a knife through soft flesh. The firestorms they unleashed were so powerful that they could incinerate entire cities within seconds, leaving nothing behind but ashes. Their reputation as conquerors of the galaxy was well earned, and they had every reason to believe Earth would be just another quick victory in their long history of domination. Yet, amid the devastation, something unexpected happened. Despite the overwhelming destruction, humanity refused to give in. In the wake of the Draxian bombardment, pockets of survivors, both military and civilian, began to regroup. Deep within underground bunkers, in hidden military facilities, and even among the ruins of the cities, humanity's leaders and soldiers huddled together in secret, plotting a counterattack. They knew they couldn't stop the Draxians by sheer force alone. The invaders' weapons were too advanced, their firepower too overwhelming. But humanity had something that the Draxians had never considered, something that had been part of Earth's history since the dawn of civilization: fire itself. In those secret locations, human engineers and military experts worked feverishly to create a weapon that could turn the tide of battle. The Flamethrower. A simple device, yet deadly in the hands of someone who understood its potential. It was a crude weapon, not as advanced as the Draxian plasma-based firestorms, but it had one key advantage: humanity knew how to use it with ingenuity and precision. The Flamethrower was nothing more than a pressurized tank of fuel connected to a nozzle that expelled a jet of fire, but in the right circumstances, it could be devastating. What it lacked in sheer power, it made up for in versatility and ease of use. The flames could be directed with pinpoint accuracy, creating walls of fire that could halt an advancing enemy or turning the tide in a close-quarters battle. The humans understood fire on a level the Draxians never would. The Flamethrower wasn't just a tool of destruction, it was a symbol of humanity's refusal to surrender. But the Draxians didn't take this lightly. They began to send more advanced units to Earth, better equipped to deal with the threat. They sent heavily armored troops, plasma artillery, and advanced mechs, each one more powerful than the last. But no matter how hard they tried, the humans' flamethrowers always found a way to strike back. They discovered ways to modify the flames, turning them into high-powered jets of plasma, capable of cutting through the Draxians' armor. The flames became a symbol of the resistance, and the Draxians couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. As the battle raged on, the Draxian leaders began to realize they had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity, and in doing so, they had awakened a force they could never control: human ingenuity. The fire that the Draxians had once used as their weapon of conquest was now being wielded against them in ways they never could have imagined. The humans, it turned out, weren't just survivors, they were innovators. They had found a way to use fire not just to destroy, but to create something entirely new. And as the flames of rebellion spread across Earth, the Draxians could only watch, stunned, as their empire teetered on the brink of collapse. The fire that had been their strength was now their downfall, and the humans, these creatures they had thought so weak, had turned the tables. The battle was far from over, but one thing was certain: the Draxians had underestimated humanity's true power. They had thought they had mastered fire, but they had no idea what they were up against. The Draxians launched their strike against Earth with terrifying precision. Their vast fleet, with its towering ships and plasma cannons, swept through the atmosphere like a storm of fire, turning Earth's major cities into charred ruins. From the moment they arrived, the skies above the planet were filled with the ominous glow of plasma bolts raining down, igniting skyscrapers and forests, leaving nothing but smoldering rubble in their wake. The Draxian invasion was swift and relentless, an unstoppable force designed to crush the planet's defenses before they had a chance to react. From orbit, the Draxians controlled the skies with terrifying efficiency, their weapons cutting through Earth's defenses as easily as a knife through soft flesh. The firestorms they unleashed were so powerful that they could incinerate entire cities within seconds, leaving nothing behind but ashes. Their reputation as conquerors of the galaxy was well earned, and they had every reason to believe Earth would be just another quick victory in their long history of domination. Yet, amid the devastation, something unexpected happened. Despite the overwhelming destruction, humanity refused to give in. In the wake of the Draxian bombardment, pockets of survivors, both military and civilian, began to regroup. Deep within underground bunkers, in hidden military facilities, and even among the ruins of the cities, humanity's leaders and soldiers huddled together in secret, plotting a counterattack. They knew they couldn't stop the Draxians by sheer force alone. The invaders' weapons were too advanced, their firepower too overwhelming. But humanity had something that the Draxians had never considered, something that had been part of Earth's history since the dawn of civilization: fire itself. In those secret locations, human engineers and military experts worked feverishly to create a weapon that could turn the tide of battle. The Flamethrower. A simple device, yet deadly in the hands of someone who understood its potential. It was a crude weapon, not as advanced as the Draxian plasma-based firestorms, but it had one key advantage: humanity knew how to use it with ingenuity and precision. The Flamethrower was nothing more than a pressurized tank of fuel connected to a nozzle that expelled a jet of fire, but in the right circumstances, it could be devastating. What it lacked in sheer power, it made up for in versatility and ease of use. The flames could be directed with pinpoint accuracy, creating walls of fire that could halt an advancing enemy or turning the tide in a close-quarters battle. The humans understood fire on a level the Draxians never would. The Flamethrower wasn't just a tool of destruction, it was a symbol of humanity's refusal to surrender. The first time a human resistance fighter used a Flamethrower against a Draxian unit, the aliens didn't know what to think. They had seen fire before, of course, but only in the form of their own plasma weapons. They had never encountered fire used in such a way. The human soldiers, armed with nothing more than these makeshift weapons, managed to inflict surprising damage. The Draxians watched, confused and somewhat amused, as the humans hurled fire into the faces of their soldiers, the flames licking at their armored suits. At first, they thought the humans' weapon was nothing more than a nuisance. What could these small, fragile creatures do with such an ancient, inefficient tool against their superior technology? But the Draxians soon learned the hard way that they had underestimated humanity. The Flamethrowers may not have been as powerful as their plasma-based weapons, but the humans used them in ways the Draxians could not have predicted. The Flamethrowers were used in hit-and-run tactics, ambushing Draxian patrols in narrow streets and dense forests. The flames forced the Draxians to retreat, their armor unable to withstand the intense heat when applied in such unexpected ways. The flamethrower wasn't just a weapon, it was a new kind of strategy. It allowed the humans to fight on their own terms, in places where the Draxians' superior technology had little advantage. In the forests, the humans set traps, leading the Draxian forces into tight spaces where their plasma weapons were useless. In urban environments, the humans created walls of fire, trapping the Draxians in the ruins of their own making. The Draxians, though confused, were not easily deterred. They were a proud race, and their arrogance was as vast as their power. At first, they scoffed at the human weaponry, seeing it as nothing more than the last, desperate gasp of a dying species. They had conquered planets far more advanced than Earth, and they saw the humans as nothing more than a fleeting obstacle to their inevitable victory. But as the resistance grew, so did the effectiveness of the flamethrowers. They were no longer a symbol of desperation, they had become a symbol of defiance, a force that the Draxians couldn't ignore. As the days passed, the humans began to modify and improve their flamethrowers, making them even more deadly. The initial models had been crude, but the humans were nothing if not resourceful. They found ways to increase the range and intensity of the flames, turning the flamethrowers into weapons capable of standing up to the Draxians' more advanced technology. The humans' ability to adapt and innovate seemed endless, and it wasn't long before they began to use their flamethrowers in ways the Draxians hadn't even considered. They created flamethrower tanks, vehicles designed to deliver waves of fire with terrifying power. They modified their weapons for use in space, where the Draxians had always held the advantage. No matter where the Draxians went, they were met with the searing heat of human-made flames. Despite the continued bombardment from the Draxian fleet, the humans refused to back down. They fought back with a fierce determination that only grew stronger with each passing day. The Draxians' initial overconfidence began to erode as they realized the true power of the humans' ingenuity. The invaders had underestimated the humans' ability to adapt and innovate. They had thought fire was their weapon, their ultimate power, but they had failed to see that the very thing they had used to destroy could be turned against them. Fire was no longer a tool of terror. It was a symbol of humanity's defiance. The Draxians began to fear the humans in ways they never had before. They had conquered entire civilizations with fire, but the humans had taken that very weapon and turned it into a force that threatened their empire. What had once been their greatest strength was now becoming their greatest weakness, and the fire they had wielded so carelessly now burned at their heels. The battle for Earth was far from over, but one thing was certain: the Draxians would never look at fire the same way again. The spark of resistance had been lit, and the flames of human ingenuity were beginning to spread. The Draxians, confident in their overwhelming technological superiority, continued their relentless assault on Earth, determined to extinguish any trace of resistance. Their firestorms rained down from orbit. With their advanced plasma weapons, they tore through human defenses, pushing deeper into the planet's heart. Yet, as their forces advanced, they began to encounter something unexpected: a human resistance that refused to yield, fighting back with a ferocity the Draxians hadn't anticipated. At first, the Draxians had dismissed the humans' flamethrowers as primitive relics, mere tools of desperation. But with each passing day, the alien invaders found themselves facing a growing number of human fighters who wielded fire, not as a simple weapon, but as an extension of their very will. And to their surprise, these humans didn't cower in the face of the flames. They thrived in it. Instead of fleeing from the fires, humans adapted and used them to their advantage in ways the Draxians could not have predicted. The flamethrowers, though not nearly as powerful as the plasma weapons the Draxians wielded, were far more versatile. The humans deployed them in narrow corridors, where the Draxian plasma cannons struggled to maneuver. They used the flames to clear forests, forcing the Draxians into an environment where their advanced weaponry was rendered almost useless. In underground tunnels, where the air was thin and the Draxian suits struggled to maintain temperature control, the humans thrived in the heat, setting traps that turned the invaders' own flames back on them. The Draxians, who had assumed their mastery of fire was unchallenged, were now facing a very different kind of battle. These humans had an uncanny ability to adapt, to wield fire in ways that twisted the very concept of power. What frustrated the Draxians the most wasn't just the fact that their enemies were putting up a fight. It was that these humans seemed to be connected to fire in a way they couldn't comprehend. For the Draxians, fire had always been a tool, a weapon to be controlled and unleashed with calculated precision. But the humans didn't just use fire, they became it. The flamethrowers in their hands weren't merely instruments of destruction, they were expressions of human defiance. Each burst of fire, each controlled jet of flame, was a statement. The humans weren't fighting to win. They were fighting to survive. And in doing so, they were turning fire into a symbol of their resistance, a weapon more powerful than anything the Draxians had ever imagined. As the resistance grew bolder, the Draxians began to question their own assumptions. How could these primitive beings use fire so effectively? How could they turn something so destructive into an instrument of survival? It didn't make sense. The Draxians had conquered planets far more advanced than Earth, each one bowing to their superior technology and weaponry. They had faced species with spacefaring civilizations, some of whom had harnessed the power of the stars themselves. Yet these humans, who had nothing more than simple flame-based weapons, were giving them more trouble than any other species they had encountered. It was maddening. The Draxians had assumed that fire was their domain, that they were the masters of destruction. But the humans had taken that very fire and turned it into something far more dangerous. A weapon not just of war, but of spirit. It wasn't just the humans' tactics that were impressive, it was their sheer resolve. The Draxians had never encountered an enemy so determined, so willing to fight and sacrifice in the face of overwhelming odds. Everywhere the Draxians turned, they found humans wielding fire with the precision and passion of artists. They didn't just shoot flames at random, they used them in precise, calculated ways. They set ambushes in forests, sending waves of fire through the trees to flush out Draxian patrols. They used the fire to create diversions, leading the invaders into traps. In the cities, where the Draxians had assumed they would have the upper hand, the humans fought back with even greater determination, using their flamethrowers to hold entire streets and buildings. The Draxians, whose flames had once been a symbol of their unstoppable power, now found themselves forced to retreat, to regroup, as the very fire they had once wielded against others became the force that stood between them and victory. As the months wore on, the Draxians' pride began to erode. They had underestimated these humans, believing their weapons and technology were superior. They had never imagined that such a primitive species could fight back with such innovation, such creativity. The Draxians began to question their own superiority. How could a species they had once dismissed as insignificant challenge them so fiercely? These humans, so small and weak by their standards, had found a way to use fire not as a tool of destruction, but as a force of life. They had turned the very weapon meant to kill them into something that symbolized their spirit and defiance. For the Draxians, it was a painful realization. They had never seen fire used in this way. To them, fire was about domination, about subjugating the weak. But the humans had taken that fire and used it to fight back, to push the invaders away, to protect what was theirs. The flames that had once been symbols of the Draxian Empire were now burning brightly in the hands of their enemies, and the fire that they had hoped would end the war was now fueling the resistance. It was a realization that stung their pride, and it was one they could not shake. The humans had proven something that no one, not even the Draxians, had considered, that fire, in the right hands, could be more than just a weapon of destruction. It could be a weapon of survival, of hope, of defiance. The Draxians were facing something they had never anticipated, an enemy that didn't just fight with fire, but became it. And as they continued their offensive, the flames that had once been their greatest strength now burned against them, threatening to consume everything they had worked so hard to conquer. In the end, the Draxians had learned a bitter truth. They had underestimated humanity. The humans had taken their own fire, their own weapon, and turned it into something far more powerful than the Draxians had ever imagined. The fire that had once been a tool of terror had now become the very thing that fueled the fight for Earth's survival. And as the flames of resistance continued to spread, the Draxians were left to wonder, could they still win this war, or had they already lost it to the humans' fire? As the war between the Draxians and humanity raged on, the balance of power began to shift. The Draxians, once certain of their victory, now found themselves grappling with an enemy that refused to bow under the weight of their advanced weaponry. The humans, with their seemingly primitive flamethrowers, had become a force to be reckoned with. The flames they wielded had become more than just a weapon. They were a symbol of defiance, a reminder that humanity would not be erased without a fight. It was in the heat of this conflict that one human commander would rise above the rest to lead her people in a daring, game-changing assault against the Draxians' strongest hold. Commander Ava Blackwood, a battle-hardened veteran and a beacon of hope for the Resistance, knew the stakes were higher than ever. The Draxians had taken control of a vital stronghold, one that was thought to be impenetrable. It was the heart of their operations on Earth, a place where their forces gathered and launched their most destructive offensives. The Draxians believed it was their fortress, their symbol of dominance over Earth. But Commander Blackwood saw it as the perfect target for a strike that could turn the tide of the war. Armed with a cutting-edge flamethrower, a weapon unlike any other used by the Resistance, she was ready to take the fight to the Draxians in ways they couldn't possibly anticipate. This flamethrower was no ordinary weapon. It was the culmination of months of human ingenuity, a new design that allowed for greater firepower, more precision, and a higher level of control over the flames. The Draxians had long believed they had mastered fire, but they had never seen anything like this. The new weapon had the capacity to release torrents of flame that could burn through even the toughest Draxian armor and turn entire squads of soldiers into a wall of fire. Ava knew it was risky, but if successful, it would shatter the Draxians' grip on Earth's future. The plan was simple: break through their defenses, unleash the flames, and let the fire do the rest. As she and her team approached the Draxian stronghold under the cover of darkness, Ava's heart pounded in her chest. The massive compound loomed ahead, surrounded by fortified walls and armed sentries. It seemed almost impossible, but she had no doubt. The flames would work. She would make them work. The plan was already in motion. The Resistance fighters spread out, taking positions along key routes leading to the stronghold's defenses. The Draxians, confident in their superior technology and firepower, had not expected a full-scale assault from a group as small as the one Ava commanded. They were about to be proven horribly wrong. The battle that ensued was chaotic, filled with the deafening roar of gunfire, the crackle of flames, and the screams of both soldiers and invaders. Ava led her squad through the initial wave of fire. The heat from the Draxian plasma blasts intense, but it was nothing compared to the torrent of flame she unleashed in return. With every pull of the trigger, fire roared from her flamethrower, spreading in thick, blazing arcs that engulfed the Draxian soldiers and sent shockwaves of terror through their ranks. The Draxians had thought they could control fire, but here, in the heart of their own stronghold, it was humanity's flames that ruled. As the assault continued, the humans pressed on with a ferocity that shocked the Draxians. Ava's flamethrower cut through their defenses like a knife through paper, sending waves of fire over the invaders. The Draxian stronghold, once a fortress of invulnerability, began to crack under the heat of human resistance. With each passing moment, the Draxians found themselves forced back, retreating from their prized location as the fire spread further. The invaders, once so sure of their dominance, were now helpless in the face of the flames that they had always used to burn others. But the true horror for the Draxians came when they discovered the full extent of the humans' weaponry. What they hadn't counted on was the ingenuity that went into the flamethrower's design. It wasn't just fire anymore, it was a force of nature. The humans had discovered a way to turn their basic tools of war into something far more potent. They had managed to create a flamethrower capable of unleashing fire on an unimaginable scale, using a combination of enhanced fuel, pressure systems, and modified technology. The flamethrower could now release torrents of fire, covering large swaths of land, burning everything in its path. Entire Draxian squads were wiped out in mere seconds. Unable to escape the inferno. As the Resistance continued to push forward, the Draxians found themselves in disarray. They had never imagined humans could wield fire in this manner, an unstoppable, uncontrollable force that ravaged everything in its way. The invaders tried to fight back with their plasma cannons, but the fire was too widespread, too intense. Their once dominant technology seemed powerless against the sheer scale of the flames. The once mighty Draxians were forced to retreat in ways they never thought possible, abandoning their stronghold as the fire consumed everything in its path. It was then that the Draxians realized something truly horrifying. Humanity had turned their most basic tool, the Flamethrower, into a weapon that could obliterate entire forces. It was no longer just a weapon of resistance, it was a weapon of revolution. The flames, ignited by human tenacity and creativity, were now the spark of an uprising. The Draxians had underestimated the resilience of humanity, thinking they could simply crush the earth with their superior firepower. But the humans had turned the very flames they had once used to destroy into an unyielding force of defiance. In the chaos of the battle, Commander Blackwood stood amidst the flames, watching as the Draxians retreated from their once impregnable fortress. Her flamethrower was still roaring, the fire in her hands now a symbol of all humanity's struggle. As the Draxians fled, they were left to face the cold truth. They had misjudged the humans. Their strength, their ingenuity, and their unbreakable will had turned the flames against them. The humans weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting for their future, and they would burn their way to victory if they had to. The stronghold, once a symbol of Draxian power, now lay in ruins, a testament to the flames of human defiance. And as the smoke cleared, the Draxians realized that they had made a grave mistake. The fire they had once controlled was now beyond their reach, and the humans had set it free. The inferno of revolution had begun, and the Draxians were left wondering, could they still stop it, or had the flames already sealed their fate? The war had dragged on for months, each day a test of humanity's willpower and ingenuity. The Draxians, once certain that Earth would fall under their rule, now found themselves struggling to maintain their grip on the planet. Their advanced weapons, their firestorms from orbit, their seemingly unstoppable technology, none of it had been enough to crush the human resistance. Instead, the humans had adapted, evolved, and fought back with a resilience that had confounded their invaders. The flamethrower, the very weapon the Draxians had mocked as primitive, had become the embodiment of humanity's defiance. It was no longer just a tool, it was a symbol of survival, a symbol of triumph. The Draxian fleet, once an imposing sight in the sky, now hovered above Earth, battered and on the brink of collapse. Despite their vast technological might, the Draxians had underestimated the humans at every turn. The flame that they had thought would burn Earth to the ground had instead become the fire of revolution, spreading across the world and forcing the invaders to retreat. As the final battle loomed, the Draxian Supreme Commander, his pride shattered by the unyielding resistance, made a desperate decision. He ordered a full-scale bombardment, intending to cleanse Earth's surface with fire. He believed that this last act of devastation would finally snuff out humanity's defiance, reducing the planet to nothing more than a charred husk. But once again, the humans outsmarted their invaders. In a final, desperate stand, the human forces rallied under the leadership of Commander Ava Blackwood and other resistance leaders. They had learned from their past victories. The Draxians, unable to predict how humanity would adapt, had left critical weaknesses in their strategy. While the invaders unleashed their firestorm from above, humanity's underground resistance had already begun to execute their final counterattack. The flamethrowers, once seen as crude weapons, had evolved into something far more powerful in the hands of humans. The resistance had developed new tactics, combining guerrilla warfare with their unmatched ability to adapt and improvise. They used the very fire the Draxians had hoped to wield against them, creating pockets of resistance in key locations, drawing the invaders into traps, and turning their own flames back upon them. In the midst of the chaos, Ava Blackwood led the charge, her flamethrower blazing as she and her squad cut a path through the Draxian lines. The flames roared around them, their heat enough to sear the air itself, but Ava and her fighters pressed forward undeterred. Each step they took was a victory. Each wave of fire was a declaration of defiance, a message to the Draxians that they could never truly understand the strength of the human spirit. The Draxians had believed they could control fire, that they could use it to break humanity's will. But what they had failed to understand was that fire, for humans, wasn't just a weapon. It was an extension of their very essence, a force of life, not destruction. The Draxians began to falter. their retreating forces were met with even more resistance. The human forces, despite being outgunned and outnumbered, fought with a fierce determination that the Draxians could no longer ignore. The Draxians had come to Earth to conquer, to bring the planet under their control with fire. Instead, they found themselves burned by the very flames they had hoped to master. The Supreme Commander watched in disbelief as his fleet began to crumble. The bombardment he had ordered had only brought chaos and destruction upon his own forces. The humans, it seemed, were everywhere. They had taken their flames and used them to rewrite the rules of war. In the final hours of the battle, the Draxians were forced to make one last stand. Their forces, battered and broken, had no choice but to surrender. The fire they had unleashed upon Earth was now a symbol of their defeat, as the flames of human resistance burned brighter than ever. The Draxians, once the masters of fire, found themselves at the mercy of those they had so underestimated. They had thought they could control fire. They had thought they understood its power. But they had never known fire the way humans did. To the Draxians, fire was simply a tool of destruction, a means to an end. To humanity, fire was something far greater. It was a symbol of resilience. It was a symbol of spirit. It was a symbol of defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. With the Draxians' surrender, the world began to heal. Earth, once teetering on the brink of annihilation, had been saved not by overwhelming force, but by the sheer will of its people. The human race had proven, once and for all, that they could withstand anything thrown their way. The Draxians had underestimated them, believing their firestorms would burn humanity to ash. But the humans had turned that fire into a weapon of hope, a weapon of victory. The flames that had once been a tool of oppression were now the flames of freedom. As the last of the Draxian forces withdrew, Commander Ava Blackwood stood among her people, her flamethrower still in hand, its fire no longer a weapon of war, but a symbol of humanity's triumph. The flames that had once threatened to consume the earth now danced in celebration. Humanity had won. They had fought not just for survival, but for their future, their freedom, and their very existence. The Draxians had come to Earth thinking they could conquer it, but they had learned a harsh lesson. No matter how advanced the technology, no matter how powerful the weapons, it was humanity's spirit that would never be broken. The fires that had ravaged the Earth now burned brighter than ever, not with destruction, but with the promise of a new beginning. The Draxians had come to Earth thinking they understood fire, but they had never known its true power until they faced humanity. And as the last of the invaders retreated into the stars, they could only watch in awe as the flames of human victory burned higher and higher, lighting the way for a future that was no longer theirs to control. The dawn of humanity's victory had arrived, and the fire would never again be theirs to command.